The crystal towers of New Zelthor floated peacefully above the purple clouds of their gas giant home. For 3,000 years, the Zeltharian people had lived in harmony with 17 other star systems. Their cities were made of living crystal that grew like plants, reaching toward the warm light of their twin suns. The buildings sang soft melodies in the wind, and the people moved with grace through their perfect world. Ambassador Kethver stood in the great hall of the council chamber, watching the stars through the massive window. His tall, thin body was covered in the traditional blue robes of his rank. 6 fingers moved nervously across the smooth surface of his desk as he studied the readings on his screen. Something was wrong. Something was coming. The ships are getting closer, said Science Coordinator Valthera from her station across the room. Her voice was like music, high and clear, like all of her people. I have never seen anything like them before. Kethver looked at the data again. 3 days ago, their long-range sensors had picked up something moving through space at impossible speeds. The objects were huge, bigger than any ship in their records. They were coming from the dark regions of space where no intelligent life should exist. Show me the images again, he said. The holographic display filled the air above them. The alien ships looked nothing like the beautiful vessels of civilized races. They were dark and angular, built from materials that seemed crude and heavy. There were no elegant curves or artistic designs. These ships looked like they were built for war. How many are there? Kethver asked, though he already knew the answer would not be good. 47 ships, Valthera replied. The largest ones are 5 times bigger than our city ships. They carry energy signatures I cannot identify. Kethver felt a chill run. Through his long limbs, in all their history, the Zeltharians had never encountered a hostile species. Their first contact protocols were designed for meeting other peaceful races who valued art and wisdom above all else. But these ships looked like they belonged to a species that knew only violence. Have they responded to our greeting signals? He asked. No response to any of our communications, Valthera said, but they have changed course. They are heading directly for our system. Far across the galaxy, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant. The ship was one of 47 vessels that made up humanity's first deep space exploration fleet. They had been traveling for 18 months, following radio signals that suggested intelligent life in this part of space. Morrison was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served in 3 different wars on Earth before joining the space program. His uniform was simple and practical, designed for function rather than beauty. The bridge around him was filled with screens, controls, and the quiet hum of machinery. Sir, we're picking up some kind of energy patterns ahead, said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. She was young and eager, one of the best tactical officers in the fleet. Looks like we found what we were looking for. Morrison nodded and walked to the main display. The screen showed a star system with several planets, but what caught his attention were the artificial structures orbiting the gas giants. They were unlike anything he had ever seen, beautiful and delicate like works of art. Those are cities, he said quietly. Floating cities. Should we signal the fleet? Rodriguez asked. Morrison thought for a moment. First contact with an alien species was something humanity had dreamed about for centuries, but it was also dangerous. They had no idea what kind of beings they were about to meet. Send the signal, he said. Standard approach formation. But keep all weapon systems on standby. Behind the Defiant, 46 other ships moved into position. Each vessel carried part of humanity's best technology and brightest minds. They had traveled farther from Earth than any human had ever gone before. And now they were about to make history. Dr. Lisa Park stood in the science section of the ship, watching the sensor readings with fascination. As the fleet's chief anthropologist, she had spent years studying human cultures and preparing for this moment. But nothing could have prepared her for what she was seeing. The cities are incredible, she told her assistant. Look at the way they're built. Everything is curved and flowing, like they grew instead of being constructed. What do you think they're like? Asked the assistant. Advanced, Park replied. Very advanced. But also different from us in ways we probably can't imagine. Back on the bridge, Morrison received reports from the other ships in the fleet. The USS Horizon reported unusual energy readings from the alien cities. The USS Venture detected what appeared to be thousands of small craft moving between the floating structures. The USS Guardian sensors showed that the aliens had noticed their arrival, Rodriguez said. We're being scanned. Multiple energy beams are focused on our ships. Morrison felt his muscles tense. This was the moment that would determine whether humanity's first contact with aliens would be peaceful or violent. He had to make the right choice. Moves, he ordered. Let them scan us. We want to appear peaceful. Oh. On New Zelthair, the Zeltharian Council was in emergency session. The alien fleet had entered their system and was moving toward their homeworld. The ships were even more frightening up close. Their hulls were covered in strange markings and what looked like weapon ports. Should prepare the defense fleet, said military coordinator Jen Thaler. In Zeltharian society, the military was really just a police force that handled the rare disputes between star systems. They had no experience with actual warfare, Kethfer said firmly. We will try to communicate first. That is our way. He activated the communication array and began transmitting on all frequencies. The messages contained mathematical concepts, musical patterns, and images of their peaceful civilization. It was the standard greeting they had used successfully with 16 other species. The response from the alien ships was immediate, but confusing. They sent back different mathematical concepts, chemical formulas, and images of a blue and green planet. The images showed a world unlike anything in Zeltharian experience, a place of vast oceans, towering mountains, and violent weather. What kind of world is this? Velthera asked as she studied the alien transmissions. I do not know, Kethfer replied, but it looks dangerous. Look at these storm systems. How could intelligent life survive in such conditions? The images kept coming. The aliens showed them pictures of their planet's surface, deserts where nothing could live, frozen wastelands, and jungles filled with creatures that seemed designed to kill. It was like looking at a nightmare world. No wonder their ships looked so crude, Velthara said. They must have built them to survive the same harsh conditions as their homeworld. As the hours passed, both sides continued their attempts to communicate. The Zeltharians sent more images of their peaceful cities and gentle way of life. The humans responded with pictures of their own cities, their technology, and their art. But something was becoming clear to both sides. These were not just different species, they were completely different types of beings. The Zeltharians had evolved on a world of perfect balance and harmony. The humans had been shaped by a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. The gulf between them seemed impossible to bridge. How could beings who had never known conflict understand creatures who had been born from struggle? How could survivors of a death world trust species who had never faced real danger? As the two fleets faced each other across the void of space, both sides realized that this first contact would be unlike anything either had imagined. The peaceful builders of paradise had met the battle-hardened children of a world that knew only struggle, and neither side knew what would happen next. The Zeltharian response fleet moved through space like a gentle dance. 25 ships formed perfect patterns as they approached the alien vessels. Each ship was a work of art, its crystal hull reflecting the light of distant stars. The ships moved with grace and purpose, their formations designed to show peaceful intentions. Commander Lathanas stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, watching the alien ships grow larger on his screen. He was chosen for this mission because of his skill in talking to other species. In his long career, he had successfully made contact with 12 different alien races, but none of them had been like this. The alien ships are not moving, reported his navigation officer. They remain in their defensive formation. Lathanas studied the strange vessels. They were dark and angular, built from materials that looked heavy and crude. But there was something about them that worried him. Ships were not built for exploration or trade. They were built to survive in dangerous places. Begin the greeting sequence, he ordered. All frequencies, all known languages, the Zeltharian greeting was a thing of beauty. It began with mathematical concepts that any intelligent species would recognize. Then came musical patterns that showed the harmony of their civilization. Finally, They transmitted images of their floating cities and peaceful way of life. The response came faster than expected. The alien ships suddenly changed their formation, moving with speed and precision that made Lathanis step back from his screen in seconds. They had shifted from what looked like a peaceful group into something that his tactical systems could not understand. "What are they doing?" asked his tactical officer. "I do not know," Lathanis replied. Warriors. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Morrison watched the alien ships approach. They were beautiful in a way that took his breath away. Each vessel seemed to flow like water, its surface changing colors as it moved. Had never seen anything so elegant. "Sir, they're transmitting something," Lieutenant Rodriguez announced. "Multiple frequencies, but the language patterns are completely unknown." Morrison walked to the communication station. "Let's hear it." The alien transmission filled the bridge with sounds unlike anything they had ever heard. It was musical almost, like singing, but with mathematical patterns woven through it. The computers tried to analyze the signal, but it was too complex for their systems to decode. "It's definitely a greeting," said Lieutenant Commander Ben Carter, the fleet's language expert. "The mathematical sequences are clearly intentional. They're trying to show us they're intelligent." "Open a channel," Morrison ordered. "Let's see if we can talk back." The human response was more direct. They transmitted prime numbers, chemical equations, and images of Earth's solar system. They showed pictures of their home planet, their cities, and their technology. It was everything they thought would prove their intelligence and peaceful intentions. But something was wrong. The alien ship suddenly stopped moving. For long minutes, there was only silence from their beautiful vessels. Sir Carter said, studying his screens, "I think we might have scared them." On the Zeltharian flagship, the crew stared at the alien transmissions in growing horror. The images showed a world that looked like a nightmare. Vast oceans filled with storms, continents covered in ice and desert, and weather systems that could destroy entire cities. "How is this possible?" Elthera whispered as she studied the data. "No intelligent species could evolve on such a world." The images kept coming. The aliens showed them pictures of their cities, built from metal and stone instead of living crystal. The structures were blocky and practical, designed to withstand terrible conditions. There were no artistic curves or beautiful designs. Everything looked like it was built for war. "Look at this," said the tactical officer, pointing to one of the images. "These are their vehicles. They are covered in armor and weapons." Lathanis studied the pictures with growing concern. The alien vehicles looked like they were designed for battle. Even their civilian transportation was built to survive in dangerous conditions. "What kind of beings are these?" he asked. The answer came with the next set of transmissions. The aliens sent images of their own kind, bipedal creatures with forward-facing eyes and strong bodies. They looked like predators, built for hunting and fighting. Their faces showed intelligence, but also something else. Something that made the Zeltharians uncomfortable. "They look dangerous," Velthera said. "Their entire physiology suggests they are hunters." Back on the human fleet, Dr. Lisa Park was having similar thoughts about the aliens. The few images they had received showed tall, graceful beings with large eyes and delicate features. They looked fragile, almost like living works of art. "They're beautiful," she told her assistant. "But they also look completely defenseless." "What do you mean?" the assistant asked. Park pointed to the alien images on her screen. "Look at their body structure. They have no natural weapons, no signs of defensive adaptations. Their entire society seems built around cooperation and peace." "Is that bad?" "Not bad," Park replied. "But it means they have no experience with conflict. They might not understand our defensive postures." The breakthrough came when both sides began transmitting basic physical constants. The Zeltharians sent the speed of light, gravitational forces, and atomic weights. The humans responded with the same information, but their measurements revealed something troubling. "Commander," the science officer reported to Lathanis, "the aliens come from a world with much higher gravity than ours. The atmospheric pressure readings they are sending, no civilized species could survive such conditions." Lathanis felt a chill run through his body. Higher gravity meant stronger bodies. Dense atmosphere meant they were used to harsh conditions. Everything about these aliens suggested they came from a world that had tried to kill them. "They are Deathworlders," he said quietly. The term was used in Zeltharian science to describe theoretical species that might evolve on dangerous planets. But they were only theoretical. No one had ever expected to actually meet such beings. The human side, the revelations, were equally disturbing. The aliens came from a world with low gravity and perfect atmospheric conditions. Their transmissions showed cities that floated in the air, powered by technologies that seemed to work in harmony with nature. "They live in paradise," Morrison said to his senior staff. "Look at these images. Perfect weather, abundant resources, no natural disasters. They have never had to fight for survival." "That explains why they look so fragile," said Colonel Marcus Webb, the Marine commander. "They have never needed to be strong," Dr. Park nodded. "But it also means they have no experience with conflict. They might see our defensive preparations as aggressive." The communication attempts continued for hours. Both sides tried to establish basic understanding, but the cultural gap seemed impossible to bridge. The Zeltharians sent images of their art, music, and philosophy. The humans responded with pictures of their achievements, their exploration, and their technology. But every exchange only made the differences more clear. The aliens had achieved perfect peace through cooperation. The humans had survived by adapting to danger and overcoming challenges. "They have never had a war," Dr. Park reported after analyzing the alien transmissions. "Their entire history is one of peaceful development." Morrison found this hard to believe. How do you advance without competition? How do you develop space travel without military pressure? "Different path," Park explained. "They developed intelligence to appreciate beauty and solve complex problems. We developed intelligence to survive and overcome obstacles." The real shock came when the humans began sharing more detailed images of Earth. They showed the aliens footage of hurricanes and volcanic eruptions. They transmitted data about their planet's history of ice, ages, and asteroid impacts. The Zeltharian response was immediate and terrifying. Their ships began to move backward, creating distance between the two fleets. The elegant formations broke apart as individual vessels took defensive positions. "They are afraid of us," Carter reported. "Their ship movements suggest they see us as a threat." Morrison felt a sinking feeling in his stomach. This was not how first contact was supposed to go. They had come in peace, hoping to make friends with their neighbors among the stars. Instead, they had terrified a peaceful species with their very existence. "Sir," Rodriguez said, "the alien ships are powering up their engines. It looks like they might try to run." Morrison made a decision that would change everything. He activated the fleet communication system and gave an order that went against every military protocol he had ever learned. "All ships, power down weapons. Systems, full defensive posture. We need to show them we are not a threat." "Sir," Colonel Webb protested, "we do not know their intentions. If they attack while we are defenseless—" "Look at them, Marcus," Morrison said. "They are not capable of attack. They are terrified of us. We need to prove we are not the monsters they think we are." The order went out to all 47 ships. Weapon systems powered down, defensive shields lowered. The human fleet took a posture of complete vulnerability. It was the most dangerous gamble in human history. But it was also the only chance they had to bridge the gap between two completely different ways of existing in the universe. The next few days changed everything. Both species thought they knew about intelligent life in the galaxy. The translation programs worked day and night, slowly building bridges between two completely different ways of thinking about existence. Ambassador Kethver sat in his private chambers, reading the latest translations from the alien communications. The beings called themselves humans, and their messages were filled with words that had no equivalent in any civilized language. They spoke of war and battle and survival as if these were normal parts of life. "This cannot be accurate," he said to his assistant. "The translation system must be making errors," but the evidence kept growing. The humans sent detailed information about their world and their history. They had lived through something they called ice ages when their entire planet froze. They had survived impacts from space rocks that destroyed most life on their world. They had endured diseases that killed millions of their people. They speak of evolution as if it were a war, Valthera reported during the daily briefing. They describe their development as constant struggle against their environment. Their world tried to kill them, and they became stronger to survive. The Zeltharian Council struggled to understand this concept. In their world, evolution was a gentle process of becoming more beautiful and intelligent. Species grew and changed in harmony with their environment. The idea of hostile evolution was like trying to imagine music made of pain. "Show me their historical records again," Kethfer requested. The holographic display filled with images that made the Zeltharians uncomfortable. The humans had fought wars that lasted for years, destroying entire cities and killing millions of their own kind. They had created weapons that could burn their atmosphere and poison their water. They had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. "How are they still alive?" asked military coordinator Jen Feller. "Any species that violent should have destroyed itself long ago." "That is the mystery," Valthera replied. "They learned to control their violent nature. They still have the capacity for war, but they choose not to use it." On the human fleet, Dr. Lisa Park was having similar struggles with the alien data. The Zeltharians had sent detailed information about their society, and it read like a description of paradise. They had no poverty, no disease, no conflict of any kind. "They have achieved perfect peace," she told Captain Morrison. "Not just the absence of war, but the complete elimination of all forms of violence." Morrison found this hard to believe. "That's impossible. Every society has some form of conflict. Competition for resources, disagreements about leadership, something." "Not them," Park insisted. "Their entire civilization is built on cooperation. They make decisions by consensus. They share resources equally. They have no police force because they have no crime." Colonel Webb shook his head. "How do they handle disputes?" "What happens when someone disagrees with the group?" "They talk," Park explained. "They discuss the problem until they find a solution that works for everyone. It can take months, but they always reach agreement." The human military officers found this system incomprehensible. In their experience, some problems could only be solved by force. Some people could not be reasoned with. Some situations required quick decisions that not everyone would like. "They must be incredibly vulnerable," Webb observed. "What happens if they meet a species that does not want to cooperate?" "They have never had to find out," Park replied. "Every species they have encountered has been as peaceful as they are." The real revelation came when both sides began sharing their cultural expressions. The Zeltharians sent examples of their art, music, and literature. Everything was beautiful and harmonious, celebrating the wonder of existence and the joy of cooperation. The humans responded with their own cultural works, and the differences were shocking. Human art often dealt with conflict, struggle, and overcoming obstacles. Their music could be violent and aggressive, expressing anger and pain as well as joy and love. Their literature was filled with stories of heroes facing impossible odds. "They sing about their struggles," Ambassador Kethfer said, as he listened to human music. "Their songs tell stories of fighting against darkness and finding hope in desperate situations." The human song that affected him most was called "We Will Not Go Quietly." It was about refusing to give up even when facing certain death. The lyrics spoke of standing together against overwhelming odds and fighting for what was right.
"I do
not understand," he told Valthara. "Why do they celebrate such terrible things?" "Because for them, struggle is not terrible," she replied. "It is how they become strong. They find beauty in overcoming challenges." The Zeltharians also struggled to understand human humor. Much of it was based on conflict, competition, or making fun of failure. Two beings who had never experienced real hardship, this seemed cruel and pointless. On the human side, they were equally confused by Zeltharian culture. The alien art was beautiful but seemed to lack any sense of drama or tension. Their music was peaceful but never seemed to build to emotional climaxes. Their literature was philosophical but contained no real conflict or character development. "It's like they live in a world without problems," Dr. Park observed. "Everything is perfect, so they have no need for stories about overcoming obstacles." That explains their technology too, added Chief Engineer Tom Blake. Their ships are beautiful, but fragile. They have never needed to build anything that could survive in hostile conditions. The technology gap was another source of confusion. The Zeltharians had achieved incredible advances in fields like energy manipulation and biological engineering. They could make their crystals grow into any shape they wanted. They could manipulate gravity to make their cities float. But they had never developed anything that could be used as a weapon. Their shields were designed to protect against cosmic radiation, not enemy attacks. Their fastest ships were built for comfort during long journeys, not for escaping from danger. The humans had taken a different path. Their technology was built to survive in hostile environments. Their ships could operate in the vacuum of space, in the crushing depths of gas giant atmospheres, or in the radiation fields around neutron stars. Everything was designed with backup systems and redundancies. They have never had to prepare for failure, Morrison observed. In their world, everything works perfectly all the time. That makes them incredibly vulnerable, Webb added. If something goes wrong, they have no way to handle it. The fear began to spread through both fleets as the implications became clear. The Zeltharians realized they had encountered a species that could destroy their entire civilization without even trying. The humans' casual references to violence and warfare made them seem like monsters from a nightmare. Every human protocol seemed threatening to the peaceful aliens. When the humans mentioned defensive formations, the Zeltharians heard attack patterns. When the humans talked about contingency plans, the aliens heard preparation for war. Meanwhile, the humans began to understand that their very existence was terrifying to these gentle beings. Every standard military procedure, every safety protocol, every preparation for emergency situations was filtered through the lens of beings who had never known real danger. "We are scaring them just by being ourselves," Dr. Park told Morrison. "They look at our ships and see weapons. They look at our crew and see warriors. Cannot understand that we can be both peaceful and prepared for conflict." The breaking point came when the humans shared footage of their military training exercises. The Zeltharians watched in horror as human soldiers practiced for combat, learning to fight and survive in dangerous situations. "They train their young to be killers," Velthara reported, her voice shaking. "They teach them to hurt others and to endure pain themselves." The Zeltharian response was immediate panic. Half their ships began to retreat, preparing to flee back to their home system. The other half took defensive positions, though the idea of defense was simply to put more distance between themselves and the humans. On the human side, the retreat was seen as a sign of hostile intent. Military protocols suggested that withdrawing ships might be preparing to attack or call for reinforcements. Sir Rodriguez reported, "The alien ships are scattering. Some are retreating. Others are taking what looks like flanking positions." Morrison felt the situation spinning out of control. They'd come in peace, but every action seemed to make things worse. The gap between the two species seemed too wide to bridge. "All ships maintain defensive positions," he ordered. "Do not pursue the retreating vessels. We need to show them we are not a threat." But even this decision was misunderstood. The Zeltharians saw the human ships holding position as a sign that they were preparing to attack. The humans saw the alien retreat as evidence that peaceful contact might be impossible. Both sides prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. The Deathworlders and the Paradise Builders faced each other across the void, each seeing the other as incomprehensible and potentially dangerous. The future of both species hung in the balance, dependent on whether they could find a way to see past their fears and recognize the intelligence and goodness that existed in both civilizations. The translation systems had been working for 6 days now, and both sides were learning things that changed everything they thought they knew about intelligent life. The humans and Zeltharians could finally understand each other's words, but understanding their meanings was much harder. "Commander," Lathanis read the latest human transmission with growing amazement and horror. The humans had sent detailed medical records showing how they had defeated diseases that would have destroyed entire Zeltharian worlds. They described something called cancer that made their own bodies attack themselves, and they had found ways to fight it. They weaponized their own immune systems, he said to his medical officer. They taught their bodies to fight diseases by making them stronger. The medical officer studied the data with disbelief. This is impossible. No species could survive such internal warfare. The humans had done more than survive. They had thrived by turning their world's hostility into strength. Every challenge had made them more adaptable, more creative, more determined to find solutions to impossible problems. Look at this, Valthera said, pointing to another human transmission. They survived something they call the Black Death that killed 1/3 of their population. Instead of giving up, they learned to build better cities and develop new medicines. The humans had lived through ice ages that lasted thousands of years. They had survived asteroid impacts that blocked out their sun. It endured volcanic eruptions that poisoned their air and water. Each disaster had nearly destroyed them, but they had always found a way to rebuild and grow stronger. They are like living metal, Kethver observed. The more you try to break them, the harder they become. The most shocking revelation came when the humans shared their history of warfare. The Zeltharians learned that humans had fought conflicts. That lasted for decades, involving millions of soldiers and weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They created tools that could burn their atmosphere, Valthera reported, her voice barely above a whisper. They built weapons that could poison their world for thousands of years. Did they use them? Kethver asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Twice, she replied. They destroyed 2 of their own cities to end a war. Then they decided never to use such weapons again. This was perhaps the most incomprehensible thing of all. The humans had created the power to destroy themselves, had actually used it, and then chosen to control that power. They lived every day with weapons that could end their civilization, but they chose not to use them. How did they sleep at night? Gentler asked. How do they function knowing they could destroy everything at any moment? I think that is what makes them strong, Kethvar replied slowly. They know how fragile life is, so they value it more.
Oh.
The human fleet, Dr. Park, was struggling with her own revelations about Zeltharian society. The aliens had achieved something humanity had dreamed of for thousands of years, a truly perfect civilization. They'd eliminated poverty by sharing all resources equally. It ended disease by understanding how to live in harmony with their bodies. They had prevented war by learning to solve all problems through discussion. They live in the world we have always wanted, she told Captain Morrison. No hunger, no homelessness, no violence. They have achieved every goal humanity has ever set for itself. Morrison found this both inspiring and troubling. But how do they handle problems that cannot be solved by talking? What happens when they face something that wants to destroy them? They have never had to face such things, Park replied. Their entire evolution happened in a safe environment. They developed intelligence to appreciate beauty and solve complex puzzles, not to survive hostile conditions. The human crews studied the Zeltharian data with fascination and concern. The alien society was incredibly advanced in some ways. They had mastered energy manipulation, biological engineering, and social cooperation to degrees that humans could barely imagine. But they were also incredibly fragile. Their entire civilization was built on the assumption that everyone would cooperate and that problems could always be solved peacefully. They had no systems in place to deal with bad actors or external threats. They have no police because they have no crime, Colonel Webb observed. But what happens if someone decides to commit a crime anyway? They would not know how to handle it, Park replied. Their entire society would collapse if faced with someone who refused to cooperate. The Zeltharians had achieved paradise, but it was a paradise that could only exist in perfect conditions. Like a beautiful flower that could only grow in a greenhouse. Their civilization was magnificent but delicate. Meanwhile, the humans were beginning to understand how their own nature appeared to these peaceful beings. Everything about human society that they considered normal seemed terrifying to the Zeltharians. They think we are monsters, Morrison said, after reading the latest alien transmissions. They look at our history and see only violence and destruction. Can you blame them? Dr. Park asked. From their perspective, we are incredibly dangerous. We have the knowledge and ability to destroy worlds, and we carry that knowledge casually. The humans tried to explain that they were peaceful by choice, not by nature. They sent messages about their philosophy, their art that celebrated peace, and their laws that protected the innocent. But the Zeltharians could not get past the fact that humans were capable of terrible violence. They fear us because they cannot understand controlled aggression, Colonel Webb observed. To them, the capacity for violence means you will use violence. The fear was spreading through both fleets. The Zeltharians saw every human action through the lens of potential threat. When the humans maintained formation, the aliens saw preparation for attack. When the humans sent technical data, the aliens worried it contained information about weapons. The humans, meanwhile, were frustrated by the aliens' apparent inability to understand basic defensive concepts. The Zeltharians had no backup plans, no emergency protocols, no way to handle unexpected problems. They are completely helpless, Webb said. If anything goes wrong, they would just sit there and hope someone else fixes it. The breaking point came when both sides tried to share their educational systems. The humans showed how they taught their children about history, including the wars and disasters that had shaped their species. They explained how human children learned to be strong by studying how their ancestors had overcome impossible challenges. The Zeltharian response was horror. They could not understand why anyone would teach children about violence and suffering. In their society, children learned about beauty, cooperation, and the joy of discovery. They were protected from any knowledge that might disturb their peaceful development. They poison their young minds with stories of war, Velthara reported. They teach them that violence is sometimes necessary. But they also teach them that peace is better, Kethver pointed out, trying to find some hope in the human transmissions. How can we trust beings who must choose to be peaceful? Genthalar asked. True peace comes from nature, not from deciding not to fight.
Oh.
The humans were equally confused by Zeltharian education. The alien children learned about perfection and harmony, but they were never taught how to handle problems or overcome obstacles. They grew up expecting everything to work perfectly all the time. What happens when they face their first real problem? Morrison asked. How do they learn to be strong if they are never challenged? They do not learn to be strong, Park replied. They do not need to be. Their world provides everything they need. The two fleets hung in space, each side looking at the other with a mixture of wonder and fear. The Zeltharians saw beings of incredible power who chose to use that power peacefully, but choice implied the possibility of a different choice, and that terrified them. The humans saw beings who had achieved perfect peace and harmony, but that peace seemed to come at the cost of strength and adaptability, and that worried them. Both sides began to prepare for the possibility that peaceful contact might be impossible. The Zeltharians readied their fastest ships to carry warning messages back to their home systems. The humans checked their defensive systems and prepared contingency plans, yet neither side wanted conflict. The Zeltharians were too peaceful to attack, even in self-defense. The humans were too disciplined to strike first against beings who posed no real threat. As the hours passed, both fleets faced a terrible question. How do you build trust between species that are fundamentally different in their very nature? How do you bridge the gap between those who survive through strength and those who thrive through peace? The answer would determine not just the fate of both fleets, but the future of two entire civilizations that had finally discovered they were not alone in the universe. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place. Communications officer Lisa Chen aboard the UES. Horizon was monitoring all Zeltharian transmissions when she noticed something that the official diplomatic channels had missed. Hidden beneath the formal messages were personal communications between alien crew members and their families. Captain Rodriguez Chen called to her commanding officer. You need to hear this. Captain Rodriguez came to Chen's station and listened to the translated alien messages. What she heard changed everything. The Zeltharians were not just talking about diplomatic protocols and cultural exchanges. They were talking about their fears, their hopes, and their loved ones waiting for them at home. They are worried about their children, Chen said quietly. One of them is talking about how his daughter just learned to make crystal music. Another is concerned because her partner is sick, and she cannot be there to help. Rodriguez felt something shift in her understanding. They are not just aliens. They are people. The revelation spread through the human fleet like wildfire. The crews began to listen to the personal Zeltharian communications with new understanding. Their families. They worried about doing the right thing. They wanted to make their people proud. They are just like us, Chen reported to Captain Morrison during the daily briefing. Underneath all the technology and the peaceful society, they are people with the same hopes and fears we have. Morrison felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For days, he had been struggling with how to deal with beings who seemed completely alien. But people he could understand. People he could work with. The same revelation was happening on the Zeltharian ships. Young communications technician Rethelin had been assigned to monitor human transmissions. Unlike his superiors, he was not focusing on the military communications or technical data. He was listening to the humans talk to each other during their quiet moments. Commander Lathanis, he said during his report. The humans speak of their families too. They worry about the same things we do. Lathanis was skeptical. What could such violent beings have in common with us? One of their officers just received a message that his son took his first steps, Rethelin explained. Another is worried because her mother is old and frail. They sing songs about missing home. The young technician played a recording of human crew members singing together during their rest period. The song was slow and sad, about being far from home and hoping to see loved ones again. The melody was different from Zeltharian music, but the emotion was exactly the same. They get lonely, Rethelin said simply. Just like us. Dr. Park worked with her Zeltharian counterpart, Science Coordinator Valthera, to establish new communication protocols. Instead of focusing on their differences, they began to share the things that made both species fundamentally similar. They shared images of their children. Zeltharian young were tall and graceful, even as babies, their large eyes curious about everything around them. Human children were small and energetic, but they showed the same wonder at discovering the world. They shared their art. Zeltharian crystal sculptures were beautiful in their perfection, while human paintings were rough and emotional. But both showed the same desire to create something meaningful, to express feelings that words could not capture. They shared their music. Zeltharian songs were gentle and harmonious, like wind through crystal caves. Human music could be loud and wild, but it could also be soft and peaceful. Both species used music to celebrate joy and comfort sadness. They are not so different from us, Valthara reported to Ambassador Kethver. They feel the same emotions we do. They love their families. They fear death. They want to create beauty in the world. Kethver studied the new translations with growing amazement. The humans had sent recordings of their children laughing, their artists creating, their families gathering together. It was nothing like the violence and warfare that had dominated their previous communications. Why did they not show us this before? He asked. Because we asked about their military and their history, Valthera replied. They thought we wanted to know about their strength and their weapons. They did not know we wanted to understand their hearts. The real test came when disaster struck. The Zeltharian science vessel, Crystal, Song, was conducting experiments with a new form of energy manipulation when something went terribly wrong. The ship's power systems overloaded, causing cascading failures throughout the vessel. Captain Tethanara found herself facing a crisis her peaceful people had never prepared for. The ship's life support was failing, the navigation systems were dead, they were drifting toward the gravity well of a nearby moon. Send a distress signal, she ordered her communications officer. To whom, the officer asked? Our other ships are too far away to help in time. Tethanara looked at the tactical display showing the human fleet. The alien vessels were much closer, but asking for help from beings they still feared seemed impossible. They will think we are weak, she said. We are weak, her engineer replied. Our ship is dying. If we do not ask for help, we will all die with it. On the human fleet, the distress signal was received immediately. Captain Morrison did not hesitate for even a second. All available ships, move to assist, he ordered. Maximum speed, Sir Colonel Webb said. This could be a trap. We do not know their intentions. Morrison looked at his tactical officer with tired eyes. Marcus, their ship is dying. People are in danger. That is all I need to know. 3 human vessels raced toward the failing Zeltharian ship. The UES Guardian, UES Defender, and UES Horizon arrived within hours, their crews working frantically to stabilize the alien vessel. Chief Engineer Tom Blake led the rescue effort, working alongside Zeltharian technicians who had never dealt with such a crisis. The humans brought emergency power cells, portable life support systems, and repair equipment that the aliens had never needed before. Your ship is beautiful, Blake told the Zeltharian engineer, as they worked together to repair the power systems. But it was not built to handle failures like this. We have never needed such systems, the alien replied. Our technology does not fail. All technology fails eventually, Blake said gently. That is why we build backup systems and learn how to fix things when they break. For 18 hours, humans and Zeltharians worked side by side to save the Crystal Song. The humans provided the tools and knowledge, while the Zeltharians provided understanding of their own technology. Together, they accomplished what neither could have done alone. When the ship was finally stable, Captain Tethanara found herself face to face with Captain Morrison aboard the Guardian. She had expected to meet a warrior, a creature of violence and aggression. Instead, she found a tired man with kind eyes who had risked his life to save strangers. Why? She asked him. Why did you help us? You do not know us. You do not owe us anything. Morrison smiled for the first time in days, because that is what people do. When someone is in trouble, you help them. It does not matter if they are human or alien or anything else. You help because it is right. Tethanara felt something change in her understanding of these strange beings. They were capable of terrible violence, yes, but they were also capable of incredible compassion. They chose to use their strength to protect rather than to destroy. The rescue operation changed everything between the two fleets. The Zeltharians saw humanity's capacity for selflessness and sacrifice. The humans saw the aliens' gratitude and genuine desire for peace. Both sides began to understand that their differences were not obstacles to overcome, but strengths to be shared. The humans could teach the aliens about survival and adaptation. The Zeltharians could share their knowledge of harmony and cooperation in the weeks that followed. The two species began to build something unprecedented in the galaxy. From both races worked together on projects that neither could have imagined alone. Human engineers learned to create beauty as well as function, while Zeltharian artists discovered the power of art that spoke to struggle and triumph. The children of both species began to learn about each other. Human children were amazed by the floating cities and crystal music of the Zeltharians. Alien children were fascinated by human stories of adventure and discovery. We are building a bridge, Dr. Park told Captain Morrison as they watched human and Zeltharian crews working together to repair the Crystal Song, bridge between two completely different ways of existing in the universe. Morrison nodded as he watched a human engineer teaching a young Zeltharian how to use emergency repair tools. Maybe that is what the galaxy needs. Not just peaceful species or just strong species, but both working together. As the two fleets prepared to return to their respective homes, both sides knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. The Deathworlders had come not as conquerors, but as teachers. The peaceful builders had revealed not weakness, but wisdom. And, in the vast emptiness of space, two very different species had found something they had both been searching for without knowing it. Not just first contact, a first friendship among the stars. The humans would return to Earth with news of a peaceful civilization that had achieved everything humanity dreamed of. The Zeltharians would go home with knowledge of beings who had turned hardship into strength and chose compassion over conquest.